Um, yeah. So, so you guys are right. One of the functions is for protection. So it's both for injuries, like when you break your skin during, like when you like hit the floor or something, or also infections, like from bacteria and viruses. And can anyone come up with a different function? You can say it in the chat. Yeah, we do have a note sheet. It's in Classroom. That's true. It does keep your organs in. I do have another. Okay. So another function that the skin does is regulating body temperature. So whenever it's like a really hot day, you might notice that you sweat a lot, and that has a function because the water inside the sweat actually dissipates all the extra heat, so you don't have it on your body anymore. So you can actually prevent getting like different like disease. Well, not really a disease, but you can avoid getting things like heat strokes. Yeah, that's true. Homeostasis is a pretty general term. There's a lot of homeostatic things that the skin does. So another thing that it does is sense different things on your skin. So like if you ever felt something move like brushing on your hairs, there's actually a receptor underneath your hairs, and that's one of the senses. Like, well, that's one of the receptors for the skin. And yeah, it also absorbs vitamin D. The integumentary system, so it's basically just the hair, skin, and nails. Yep, basically everything. Also, it helps regulate water loss. So if you don't drink enough water or you have too much water, it tries to compensate in your sweat and things like that. And so someone mentioned this already, but it is involved in chemical synthesis like vitamin D. So once I saw this like video that said that humans are kind of like plants because they need sunlight to create things. So we use UV rays to actually create vitamin D. And if you remember from like the previous lectures, vitamin D is useful because it helps store calcium. So vitamin D is good for everyone, guys, and you should stay outside. Wait, is everyone good with this? No, the teeth are part of the skeletal system. Is everyone good right now?
Yeah.
Um, oh, actually, that's true. They are the teeth are the digestive system and the skeletal system. Um, they just have different function. Well, no, I guess I don't know. They could be part of multiple systems. So, okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, so one thing that the skin does really well is protection. So if you're a pathogen that's trying to enter the skin, you're going to have a really bad time because a multiple there's multiple things that the pathogen has to get through. So one of the things is keratin. So you've probably heard that keratin is like this protein. You find it in like your hair and your nails maybe, but it's also in your skin too. And it prevents pathogens from breaking through because it's very rigid. Um, Another thing is that the pH of the skin is kind of acidic, and what this actually does is it kind of destroys the proteins that surround the pathogen, so it's less likely to pass through and actually cause an infection. Another thing is that sebum and sweat. I'll talk about this more like in depth in the next lesson, but they also have like these enzymes that break down pathogens. Another thing is defensin. This is a protein that also has a similar function to the things inside sebum and sweat. Lastly, there's Langerhans cells. Langerhans cells, they're actually immune cells, but they have a specific function. So what they do is they collect all these proteins on the surface of the pathogens. They're called antigens. And these are basically like clues for detecting what kind of pathogens are inside the cell. And from that, it can send this information to other cells, killer T cells, and the killer T cells can go off and kill these cells. Pathogens, yeah, like they could be like viruses, bacteria, even fungi, just anything that tries to invade your body. I'm just gonna give a little bit more time because this is like a lot of different things. Sometimes you get sick because I get like a wound, and once we get a wound, basically the skin is completely open, and all those pathogens can get inside. And sometimes we can get it from like our mouth and our nose because those openings still like they still have the risk of having pathogens go straight inside of them. The antimicrobial protein is defensive. I'm just going to put it in the chat. Okay, is everyone good? Okay, no one's saying anything, so I'm guessing we're good.
Wait, could you wait 10 seconds?
Sure.
Oh, you could go on now.
Okay. Okay, another function that the skin has is homeostasis. Someone mentioned this before, but there's a lot of different things that it regulates. So one thing it regulates is body temperature. So if you see the diagram, if it's very hot outside, you see that the blood vessels, they dilate, which means they expand. And that allows them for, it allows it so that it can release more heat into the air. Also, oh wait, that's for later. Another thing is that it creates a lot of sweat when it's really hot outside. And I mentioned this before, but the sweat basically dissipates the heat as well. Urea is in urine. So that's the thing that the sweat does. So the thing is, there's this really complex process for trying to filter all the waste that we have inside our body. Um, I guess so. There's like waste inside the sweat, and it's like another way for it to leave the body without having to go through the complex process of the urinary system. So okay. Does that answer your question, Kunal? All right. Yeah. So what do you think would happen if we didn't produce sweat?
We'd burn up.
The salt, water, and urea would like stain our body.
That's true.
You'd have
Yeah,
to
these are
water
good
like every
answers.
5 seconds, and if you didn't, you would die. Or maybe the water wouldn't help because it's that hot in God. Because everything.
Yeah. I think if you didn't have sweat, you're more likely to have things like heat strokes, which are pretty serious. So I'm imagining if someone didn't have that, they'd have to not be they probably wouldn't be able to go outside that often. Mhm. And it's kind of sad because I was mentioning before that you need to go outside and have exposure to UV rays in order to get vitamin D. So yeah, they couldn't go. They probably can't go outside that much, and also they probably are at more risk of brittle bones. So yeah, it's pretty sad life. So okay, now we're gonna talk about the epidermis. There's 5 different layers. There's a stratum corneum, the stratum lucidum. The lucidum is very like clear looking, so I find it kind of interesting. There's a stratum granulosum, and it's over here. The stratum spinosum, it's the big layer over here, and the stratum basal over here. So a way that I remember it, or actually I don't remember it this way, but I saw it in a video. It says, "Come, let's get sunburned," and that's like the the mnemonic for these places. That's true. There's not a lot of urea that's dissipated in sweat. It's a very small amount.
Wait, how is it the mnemonic? I don't see.
Oh, okay. CLG. I can't see SB.
Oh,
Yeah. So if you ever want to know the layers of the epidermis, just think about getting sunburned. Okay, so this is kind of a review, but um, some of this is also new. So can anyone figure out what this first cell is? I think I didn't explain this yet, so.
Is it keratinocytes?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, can you
Yep,
go back for a
that's right.
second? I just need to copy down the thing, like for my notes.
Okay, sure. There we go.
Thank
Okay, is everyone good now? Okay, I think everyone's good. Radiation? Radiation, okay, there's another function the skin does have. The thing is, if you look at the stratum corneum, this layer is completely dead, and there's no like nucleus or anything like that. So you do get radiation protection from it, just like a tiny bit though. It's not really. You still need to wear like a radiation suit if you're around like a really radioactive area, but it does prevent some of the radioactive particles from hitting the alive cells. It does cause cancer. It's not like 100% protection. There's still a chance that you're gonna find particles go through all the layers until the basal or something. And these have like living cells, so you can get cancers here. Yeah, they like expire. They're alive here and they basically just die off and they come up through these layers. And then they're shed off here and that process is called cornification. Yeah, they get replaced and they basically shed. So if you think about like lizards shedding their skin, we basically do that but all the time. Okay. I'm gonna go on to the next slide. So we did say that the first one is keratinocytes. So can anyone guess what the second cell is? It's over here.
Melanocytes? Melanocytes? Is it Langerhans cells?
Oh, she left the meeting. Oh, I'll contact her to see what happens.
Oh, yes.
You're muted. Yeah, I was just saying that my internet is really bad. Yeah, it just like it stops at like the worst times. Okay. Okay. Can anyone guess what the third cell is?
Keratinocytes.
No, we
Oh,
didn't
the
do
third cell.
We didn't check the second one.
Second one?
Yeah.
Oh, is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't. Okay. The second one is melanocytes. So these are the ones that make melanin that make your skin tone. So can anyone guess what the third one is?
Langerhans cells.
Merkel cell.
Hmm?
Merkel cell.
Yeah. Wait, what was the second answer?
Is it Langerhans cells?
Merkel cell.
Mm-hmm. It's not Merkel cells. It is Langerhans cells. So these cells, you find them mostly in the stratum spinosum. This is, if you can, it's kind of hard to see, but this is like the first layer. This is the stratum basale, and then this is the second layer, or the stratum spinosum. And yeah, so that's where they appear. And lastly, can anyone guess what this is?
Is that the Merkel cell?
Mm-hmm.
What do we put on the notes sheet?
I don't think there's a note. There's like notes that match to this slide, but if you find anything like important about these cells, you can just write it down wherever. I think I made I'm pretty sure I made like a chart, but I'm not entirely sure. You can put a chart if you want. Okay, is everyone good with this slide?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So I was talking about melanocytes before, but I think I should be a little bit more specific. So there are these things inside melanocytes called melanosomes, and these are basically tiny little like vesicles. So it's just like a little like membrane that holds melanin inside it, and it just takes it all over the skin. And this is actually what determines skin color. I said melanocytes before, but that was if I'm lagging, I'm not sure. Is this
Lot.
is this better now? This is not better. I don't
No,
know.
it's a
what to
little
do.
better.
It's a little better? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi is just really bad. Yeah, so here's like the melanocyte producing melanosomes in this drawing. Okay, so now we're going to go to the stem-based cell. So a lot of the cells that we were talking about before, they're on this. What do we put into the chart? So I have like different columns. So one of them is like the number of layers of cells. The second one, or actually I'll just type it in the chat.
Does melanocytes like determine your skin color? Like if you have more melanin, you're gonna be darker.
Yeah, but it's actually the number of melanosomes that determine whether you're light-skinned or dark-skinned. We actually have a similar number of melanocytes regardless of our skin color. It's just melanosomes that determine. I think someone else can put that in. I have to exit screen share and just put it. Okay. So this layer is made out of basal cells. These are actually cells that can turn into the keratinocytes that we see here. Also, there's Merkel cells. These sense light. And also you can notice how the cells here kind of go in a wavy pattern. And this is actually called an epidermal ridge. This is also what creates your fingerprints.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What are like stem cells?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Stem cells.
someone posted the attendance form.
Yeah, someone was asking for it, so. So stem cells, they're basically like super cells because they can do any type of cell depending on the environment that they're in. So if they're surrounded by a bunch of these proteins that ask it to turn into a keratinocyte, so it turns into one. It's basically just one layer of skin. Yeah, single row, one layer. Another thing is the basement membrane. This is a little bit more specific. I don't think you need to write this in your notes, but it's basically this tiny line here that separates the epidermis from the dermis below it. Okay. Wait, is everyone good with this?
Can you turn the slide for like 10 more seconds?
Sure. Okay. A lot of this information is like it's like a little bit more in depth. So I'd say the stuff that you need in your notes more than anything else, just what Merkel cells, melanocytes, and basal cells are. We are doing a Kahoot. And I want to finish this presentation in time, so that's why I'm being kind of rushed. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna just move on. If you still need help, you can just look at the recording. So here's a picture of the stratum basal. It's like this final one layer over here. Okay, so now we're going to go to the spinosome. So here, this is where most of the vitamin D synthesis happens. There's this thing called cholecalciferol, and this is where UV rays come in. It turns into this thing called calcidiol, which turns into vitamin D. You don't need to know these names though. I just put them in here just in case you were curious. And this is 8 to 10 layers of keratinocytes. So one thing that's interesting about this layer is that it looks really spiky if you look at it from a microscope. And the reason why is because there's these proteins between these cells, and they're called desmosomes. So desmosomes connect these cells together, creating that appearance. And additionally, it also helps the skin stay strong and stable. And like I mentioned before, this layer is where you're going to find most of your Langerhans cells. So the function of these Langerhans cells is more than just like, oh wait, I did explain what Langerhans cells are. I'm forgetting. Can anyone remind me what Langerhans cells do?
Langerhans cells are like immune cells that go up to like the surface to like fight pathogens.
But there's like a specific purpose that they do.
They like collect proteins.
Yeah. So people say antigen presenting dendritic cells. Dendritic cells is just the type of immune cell that does these things. Okay, I'm gonna move on because we don't have a lot of time. Yeah, this is another picture of the stratum spinosum over here. Okay, so now the stratum granulum. So this also has a very interesting appearance. Instead of being spiky, it looks granular. And the reason why is because there are these things called keratohyalin granules. And these contain all these different proteins. And inside of them, they can, there's like a bunch of different things, and they have a lot of uses, but eventually they turn into okay, yeah, I'll go back for a second, just for a little bit of time though. Is that good? Is that enough time? I'm hoping that's enough time because there's still a lot left to go. Okay, it's enough time. Lamellar bodies, they're also really specific, and you probably won't need to know what these are, but they're also very similar to keratohyalin granules. Also, one thing that's important about this layer is that the keratinocytes, they were alive before, but this is the first layer where they begin to die. And this is when they produce like the most proteins at the same time, and which are in these granules. Okay. Is everyone good with this slide? Okay. Can anyone guess where the stratum granulosum is in this image?
The place with all the black stuff starting to form?
Yep. So now we're on the lucidum. This layer has, it's only found in thick skin. So thick skin means like your palms or your feet. And they actually have a lighter color too. And that's because of the lucidum. So one thing that you find a lot in this layer is this thing called a ledin. This is also very specific, but it's like very clear, and it's a lipid-based protein. And it's basically created from these things, which I was talking about before, that were created here. So basically what happened is that there were these processes that occurred in this layer, and then it created this clear looking protein, in this layer. Oh, not everyone is good. Okay, should I go back? Actually, it's 10:36 right now. I think I should stay on this slide. Sorry guys. I don't have a lot of time.
Wait, could you like explain this one more time? Because my computer like froze.
Sure. So in this layer, you'll find this protein called elidin, and it's like this lipid oily substance, and it's basically created from the things that that were in this layer. So keratohyalin granules and lamellar bodies. There will be a recording. So an interesting fun fact is that this is also the reason why your lips are like reddish in color, because there's a lot of elidin. So it's very clear and it actually shows the blood vessels from underneath. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Elidin, um, that's the spelling. Okay. So lastly, we have the stratum corneum. So in this layer, the cells are basically completely died off, and there's this thing called cornification, and cornification is basically when the cells begin to just peel off the epidermis. If you ever like had like ashy elbows or something, basically there's a bunch of keratinocytes that are dead, and they're just they're being shed off. Okay, in the stratum corneum, there's all these dead keratinocytes, and they go through this thing called cornification, and that's basically when they're peeled off from the epidermis. Like you can see how the cells are being shed here. Oh, wait, sorry. Is everyone good with this?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're gonna go to the dermis. So in here, you'll mostly find cells called fibroblasts. And what they do is they create two essential proteins. They create collagen and elastin. So can anyone guess what collagen does? Or I have the answer, but
It gives strength.
yeah, so collagen gives strength to this layer of skin. Also, elastin. Can anyone guess what this means?
Elastic, so allows the skin to stretch.
So once, like Daphne was talking about elasticity in muscle cells, this is the same thing. It's the ability for the skin to stretch and then come back to its original shape. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide. So here's like a bit more of like the layers of the dermis. So before I was talking about the epidermal ridge, it's over here. It's like this like thin layer that, oh sorry, that that causes like the fingerprints. So below that, you see these like little bulb thingies. That's the papillary layer. There's a recording, so if you need more time, you still need more time? Okay, I guess a lot of people do need more time, so I'll go back. So don't feel compelled like to write down exactly everything on this slide. This is like a lot of big words, so it might take more time And if you want, you can just write whatever makes this easier for you. 3 layers in the note sheet. Are you talking about the epidermis? The next slide. I think I didn't put a place for the epidermal ridge. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Yeah, so the epidermal ridge isn't really a part of the dermis. It's more so the lowest layer of the epidermis, but it is like good to keep for perspective, so that's why I put it there. So these gold thingies are the papillary layer. The kind of tissue that they have is areolar connective tissue, so it's very airy inside, and it's also like the tissue looks like really random. It doesn't have like a structured look to it. So below that, there's a reticular layer, and it's over here. So the reticular layer has dense irregular connective tissue. So this one has like airy looking structures, and this one is kind of the same thing, except it's more dense. And there's a hypodermis too. The hypodermis isn't really considered part of the skin, but it's below these 2 layers, and it's basically just fat. Okay, is this good with everyone? I'll just give like 20 more seconds. Okay. So just there's a recording after too, so if you still need more time. Okay. So you'll notice that different people have different skin like texture and tone, and sometimes that is indicative of a disease. So one of them is albinism. Albinism is when you can't even produce melanin. So you'll see like people who have really fair looking skin and their hair is also really blonde looking. And another thing that might happen is that their eyes also look kind of red. The reason why is because they don't have melanin, which creates that pigment of darkness. Another thing is pallor. Pallor is when there's not enough blood flow that's coming to the skin, so it actually looks pale. So if you're like if like people say that they look pale because they were like really shocked about something, that's because there's not a lot of blood rushing there because they're really shocked and most of their blood is in their chest area. You had jaundice, really? I That's kind of unfortunate. So another thing that's like pallor but worse is cyanotic appearance, and that's when there's basically almost no blood coming. So if you try to hold your breath, you'll have cyanosis, and your skin will look almost blue. Oh, maybe it's common when for babies because they're like still like all their like bodily systems are just beginning to function. But jaundice, you see this a lot with people who have like alcoholism. So what happens is that there's this protein. Well, can anyone guess what the protein is in red blood cells? It's hemoglobin. So what the liver does is it turns some of this excess hemoglobin when there's too much of it, and it turns it into bilirubin. So bilirubin is this other thing, and it has a yellow appearance, and sometimes there's like too much of it, of the bilirubin, and it goes into your blood and when it goes into your skin. So whenever this happens, it generally means that you have some sort of liver disease. The question was, what's the protein that red blood cells have? So another thing is arrhythmia. You'll see this like with really severe allergic reactions or like allergies and stuff like that. Basically, the capillaries inside your skin get really inflamed, and there's like a lot of blood coming there, so it looks really red. Do you guys still need a little bit more time? There's like, or is everyone good? More time? Okay.
Are we gonna be doing a coat?
We will. So I just want to finish this as soon as possible. I think we only have one slide left. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So lastly, we have different types of membranes. So for mucosal membrane, think about like your nose. So these are just openings that like air can pass through. So like your nose has mucus inside of it, and that's just to have some sort of lubrication when the air passes through. You'll also find this in like your esophagus. So another type of membrane is the serous membrane. Oh, is anyone asking for me to slow down or something? Mucous membrane? It's on the slide. So the serous membrane, this covers like different types of organs in your body. So yeah, like someone was mentioning how the integumentary system keeps organs in place. So there are membranes like the one that surrounds the heart, and it makes sure that it doesn't move around too much and potentially like have like breakages in the blood vessels. So the third type of membrane I had here, it's basically just skin. The cutaneous membrane is basically synonymous with skin. And lastly, we have the synovial membrane. Does anyone remember where this was from?
Skeletal system.
And they're, does anyone remember what kind of joint they're a part of? Yeah, it's part of a synovial joint. The key will be posted like hopefully tomorrow, or maybe I'll be able to finish it today. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so now we're gonna go to our Kahoot. Should I turn on the